Yes guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. There's the little one, Bugsy Malone, doing the things that she loves on Squirrel Patrol. I hope you are chasing your own squirrels. Guys, please do me a favour, smash the like button for me on the video. If you don't mind, if you enjoy the content, it really helps the channel grow. You guys are amazing with the like game. Unbelievable stuff at times. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. We're still marching on our way to 20k. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topic. And it's a bit of transfer news, views and clues for you. I'm going to merge it into a little bit of the Crystal Palace thing at the end, but it's got to be a quick video, so I'm going to get straight into it. Double story from the Daily Express, the Sunday Express this week. One player is a player that I haven't mentioned before, but he's part of a video that I'm building that's looking at the top kind of 4 or 5 options for our winger targets in January or next summer, depending on how much of a priority it might be. And that is Nico Williams of Atletico Bilbao fame. We'll talk about him shortly. And the other name is one we spoke about a few weeks ago, Serhou Guirassy from Stuttgart, the 27-year-old who's having the best season as a striker in his career. And I think, statistically, he's the best striker, at least in terms of goals per game, of any player in the top 5 leagues. He might even be any player across all of the leagues, to be honest, because we spoke about him about 3 weeks ago in a video. I think it was 3 weeks ago. And I'll keep the same energy about him. He's an interesting player. He's likeable to watch. He's got a good finish on him, can find the corner of the net, and obviously he's smashing it. He's absolutely smashing it. He's scored 14 goals now in, I think it's 8 games. And I think he scored 10 in the last 5 league games that he's played, including a hat-trick and 2 braces. Quite a phenomenal return. I think he scored like 4 more goals since we last spoke, which, you know, is a return of form that is just, you can't ignore it. And you can't ignore it even more so when you find out that there was, I believe on the 21st of October, a release clause that was activated that is available, I believe, from what I've read, until the end of January, that he's available for £15 million, 15 million euros maybe. So we'll park that just for a second, because I'm going to keep the same energy about him. Likeable guy to watch, but everything about him looks clumsy. It doesn't look like it's deliberate. It looks like he's got a wonderful way of finishing his dinner by accident, or at least it appears that way. Some players can just look awkward, and maybe he's one of them. Maybe he really does know what he's doing. But when you look at the highlights and the lowlight reels, everything just looks like it's not by design, like he doesn't know what he's going to do before he does it. He just kind of, he does it, and by the fortune of the way that the ball pops up, he'll kind of stumble and then get his foot around it and end up with a great goal. He looks like a fun player, but I just don't know yet whether or not this rich vein of form is the purplest of purple patches in an otherwise uneventful career. Remember, he's 27 years old and he hasn't done it until the tail end of last season and the start of this season. He's carried on that form from last year. I think he got 15 goals last season from memory. And this season he's already, like I say, I think he's on 14 after 8 games or 9 games, which is, you know, a superb return. It really is. And when you factor in the insignificant cost, you would imagine that there'll be some offers coming in or some confirmed bids, and it'll be up to him whether he wants to stay at Stuttgart, to take one of them, if that's Tottenham. Is it a player that I want to see in a Tottenham shirt? Look, I think this is, again, I'm going to say the same thing I said in the last video, and I hope that's not boring for you, but he's one of these players where you either, like, it's a punt. For me, it's a punt. It's relatively cheap for an incredible amount of value, and the Bundesliga for Stuttgart, to do it for Stuttgart, and some of the teams he scored against are teams that are a lot better than Stuttgart in the general run of play. And so he is doing it against tougher opposition than the team he plays in, but I still see this as a punt. And of course, he's not going to come in and be able to be placed in the youth team squad. He's going to take up a foreign quota number, and that is going to be meaningful, and I'll tell you why. Because next season, players that currently play in the first team, that currently sit outside of the foreign quota, are going to be moved into the foreign quota. Players like Destiny Udogie, Pape Sarr. Now, they're not going to be able to be registered in the youth system and still play in the first team because they'll be over the age of 21. So there's going to be that homegrown conversation happening again, unless we can move out some of the players that we're hoping to be able to move out of the squad anyway, like Hugo Lloris, like Eric Dyer, maybe Ivan Perisic. Obviously, we've spoken about him. As much as that's a sad thing, because I think he's such a valuable player to come off the bench, the fact that he's got that long-term injury, the fact that he's only got until the end of the season on his contract anyway, the fact that there's this ongoing rumour that he's going to be going back to Hajduk Split, and that was part of the deal for VUSKOVIC. Actually, I'm going to press pause on the whole story for a second, talk about VUSKOVIC. I don't know if you guys saw yesterday, but the Hajduk Split have got a new manager, and they was asked about VUSKOVIC and what his plans are for him, and the guy basically said, "It's done, I've got no interest in him, he's going to Tottenham." So there's no point in kind of building him up anymore. There's no point in kind of utilising him with one eye on the future, because he's not going to be in our future. And so he still can't come to Tottenham yet until January of 2025, because he doesn't turn 18 until then, and that's a visa work permit issue. But I believe that Tottenham are going to have a conversation with Hajduk Split about keeping him until January and then loaning him out somewhere into Europe where he can hopefully get some first team football and improve and still develop, and Tottenham will be a part of that conversation around which club it maybe is the best fit for him, which I think is a really interesting update. The fact that the new manager doesn't really want to put any time and effort into him, I get it. You know, it's not his long-term concern. And so Hajduk Split are willing and good enough to go and find a club that's suitable. And it's going to be difficult to find clubs that are suitable, that are going to play the same sort of system. Morning, mate, you okay? The high line that we look to play, a back four, the 4-3-3. You know, the specific system that we play is not played with any more than probably 10% of the clubs out there. Maybe less than that when you think that sometimes we do with a double inversion of the fullbacks, which is rare. So on that basis, to have Tottenham be a part of the conversation to try and identify a club in Europe that suits that as closely as possible, and that would want him and that would play him, you know. But at least Tottenham are part of the conversation, so it should be of a benefit to us to see him find a new home temporarily before he comes over. Although him leaving Croatia a year earlier than expected, is that going to unsettle him a little bit? There's always two sides to every coin, isn't there? Anyway, so with Perisic maybe seemingly being out of the squad as well, then we are going to free up some some foreign quota players. But are they all going to leave in January? And if they do, then do you want to take the punt on Serhou Guirassy? I'm asking you, do you want to take the punt on him? What do you think? If you go and look at his form right now, you will see a player who is kicking goals, literally and metaphorically. But go back and look at him at Saint Etienne, you know, and you won't see the same sort of player. I don't know. For me, it's underwhelming, and I think a little bit too risky. But obviously, I'll get on board it if that's the story that manifests, and Postecoglou has got on board that story, and he thinks that there's a player in there. Then so be it. It leaves the question then, what do you do if you are buying him? Are you buying him as the long-term replacement? Is he a stopgap? Are you just taking advantage of the fact that it's £15 million or €15 million deal, and then you can then maybe sell him on if he doesn't quite cut it at the highest level? Not entirely sure, but we'll leave that one there. And when we move on to the second part of the Sunday Express story, and that is Nico Williams, 21-year-old Atletico Bilbao, left winger, right winger, amazing dribbler. Nico Williams, he's one of the players that we were going to talk about in the top 5 options video. Now this guy is a player that I think a lot of people are turning their attention to. Look, I want to go through my version of him. He's 21 years old, so he's got plenty of time to improve in the areas of his game where he needs improvement. And there are many, there's lots of areas of his game. To me, he is the quintessential take-on winger, morning, that everyone gets excited by. He's an out-of-your-seats kind of player. He's got blistering pace, amazing acceleration, incredible take-on talents, and his stats represent that. You know, in terms of take-ons, dribbles into the penalty area, progressive carries, he's up there with the very best in Europe. In terms of shot creating actions and goal creating actions from take-ons, he's also up there. But he's largely irrelevant in every other part of his game. His passing leaves a lot to be desired. At the moment, I don't know, I don't see him closely enough to see whether he's kind of audacious with his passing and that's why the numbers look so low, or just that he doesn't pass very much because he's the guy that is the end of the move and it either works or it doesn't. If he's tackled, it goes out of play, or it's a transition, or if he gets past the first guy, then it either results in a corner or it results in a goal kick or a shot or whatever else. But ultimately his passing is terrible. His defensive work is relatively non-existent. And he's like a luxury player. He is a luxury player. But look, he is brilliant at what he's good at. And what he's good at is a sort of thing that I think that Tottenham need more of in our left winger or our right winger as an option. He possesses something that Perisic doesn't really have, or at least not to the same level. Perisic's value in his take-ons is in the cadence of his step-overs. We've spoken about this ad nauseum. You know, Decky's value is in his hold-up play, his strength, you know, and he frustrates with a lot of things that he does. Richarlison, won't even talk about him, you know how I feel. Obviously, we're without Manor Solomon now for 3 or 4 months as well. So, and Manor Solomon, I guess you could say, has got, you know, the closest resemblance to someone who can take a player on, but even he doesn't really do it to the same level as I was expecting or hoping him for. He likes to cut in and try to find an angle for a shot, similar to how Sonny used to play, you know, 2-3 years ago, when held out on the left-hand side. So this guy is someone that I think adds a different quality, but it's whether or not he's got the desire, the drive, the willingness to increase and improve the areas of the game that you are going to need from a player who, if you want him to become a regular in the first team and to start games and to finish games, then you're going to need him to improve those areas. You know, Brennan Johnson is a guy, I'm not entirely sure yet, you know, how we're going to utilise him. Obviously, we haven't really seen enough of him. He's a player that's got his own set of options, but a lot of it is based on speed. His finishing is better than Nico Williams, and they're obviously, you know, similar age, very young, lots of time on their side to improve. I think the part of the story which is interesting is that he is technically available to sign a pre-contract in January with a club from a foreign league. He's out of contract in the summer. At the moment, he has a 43 million euro release clause. The story is that he has verbally agreed to sign a 2-year extension with Bilbao, but he hasn't signed it yet. And the Express represent this idea that, you know, maybe he's going to wait and just have conversations, or his agents are going to have some conversations to see what's on the table before he commits to that 2-year contract extension, or possibly, and this is more likely, that he will still sign the contract, but only if Bilbao insert the same 43 million euro release clause into the extension of the contract. Now, to me, he hasn't done enough yet to warrant anything like a 43 million euro release clause. he's one of the players that I find really interesting and that I'm going to keep a close eye on because he's brilliant to watch. He's brilliant to watch. I think he does more step overs than anybody else in the Spanish league, and he's just footwork is so quick. But like I say, it's his all-round game that needs a lot more work. And if he's available for a free transfer in January, and that conversation can happen where you can sign him on a pre-contract and then he'll arrive next season, then that might be something that Daniel Levy and Ange Postecoglou are both on board with from a business perspective, from an asset valuation perspective, from a talent perspective, from the upside ceiling perspective. That might be something that makes sense. But then I'll ask you guys, how many players do you realistically want and expect Tottenham to sign this January? We know we need a centre-back. It's looking, for all intents and purposes, as though I'm basing this comment on the standard or the levels of the players that we're linked with. People like Tosin Adarabioyo, people like Lloyd Kelly. I'd be amazed, gobsmacked, if Tottenham were able to go back in and get someone like a Tapsoba. I just don't think that's going to happen anymore. But I think that, someone that's a step up from what we have, but a step down from who currently is in our first 11 is probably more reasonable or realistic. And I think that's an absolute must, an absolute need, an absolute certainty in January. I hope it is, at least, and I hope we get it done early. I think depending on what happens with Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, I think that there is a conversation that has to happen regarding bringing in a new midfielder. We know that we're going to be without Bissouma for a while and Sarr for a while for the African nations, and so is Bentancur and Højbjerg going to be enough with Ollie Skip and Lo Celso behind them, and obviously Maddison in there as well, to get us through that part and that point? If Højbjerg goes to Juventus, then we definitely need a new midfielder, 100%. And obviously then you've got to look up the top end of the pitch and think, what's the priority? Is it a striker or is it a winger? If you get a striker in, does that push Sonny back out to the left where he's not as effective as he currently is in the 9? We've got a player in Sonny right now who's kicking goals, again, metaphorically and physically, stepped up, banging them in and doing wonderful things. But behind him, you have Alejo Veliz, who I'm really happy to be seeing getting minutes. But if I'm entirely honest, I haven't seen him do anything at all yet that, is meaningfully reliable enough in my mind that I would trust him if Sonny and Richarlison were both out injured for any kind of length of time. And we know that Sonny, or at least I think, I'm pretty confident in my mind, that Sonny is nursing that groin strain, and that he needs a bit of time to get it better, in my mind. So I think that a striker is necessary at some point, and I think that a forward is necessary a winger is necessary at some point. Someone like Nico Williams can play off the left and the right, as can Brennan Johnson. Having this versatility and utility is important. Serhou Guirassy, he's smashing it for Stuttgart, but does he step it up to the Premier League? Not sure. There's other players that I think are more interesting to me, but they're going to cost a lot more money. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, isn't it? Is Daniel Levy going to put his hand in his pocket and finance 3 deals in January that get us over the line not over the line as in the title race, but get us to that next level where the drop-off in quality isn't quite as steep as it currently is? Now, he can do it without spending 150 million, and I don't expect him to spend 150 million. I don't expect him to spend even 100 million. He can do it probably for 70 million. But which are the players that he goes for? When it comes to a striker, I want to see us get someone in for the next 5-6 years, and I'm not sure Guirassy is going to satisfy me. I'd rather do everything you can to get Santiago Jimenez. You know how I feel about him. But we will talk about him on another day. Guys, let me know your thoughts. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, bye-bye.